Okay, for those of you who know Neil Sahota, I am not Neil Sahota, but he was going to talk about AI for Good. He's a very good friend of mine, and I lead AI for Good for the United Nations and ITU. So I think the content would be very much aligned. Now, for those of you that don't know ITU is the United Nations specialized agency for information and communication technologies. And we basically do four things actually. We coordinate and allocate radio spectrum and satellite orbits, and we develop international standards that underpin modern telecommunication networks. We help developing countries bring up their ICT infrastructure through capacity building and training. And we're unique in the UN family in that we're the only UN agency that has a membership model where we have all the member states, we have 900 private companies, and 150 academic institutions. And we're also the organizers of AI for Good. Now, before I get into AI for Good, I'd like to share something that came across my desk the other day that you might find interesting. I'd like you to have a look at these images. On the left side, you have a photograph, looks like an Instagram post. And on the right side, you have some video feed, and it looks like some kind of AI is going on there. So have a look and just try and think what's going on here. Now here's another one. So this time you have a nice gentleman on the left, also taking a selfie, some kind of AI involved. What's happening? And one more time. I think you get the picture. So what on earth is going on here? Is this the latest trailer to the Mission Impossible movie? Is this some new app off the dark web where you can spy on your friends? No, it's actually an art project called The Follower. And what this artist did is he recorded 10 days of video footage from public camera feeds, which are available all around the world. There's probably one outside right here. And he recorded this footage for 10 days, and then he went to Instagram and scraped all the publicly available profiles that were geotagged for the same location as that camera feed. And voila, you have a match. Now you can see what this football player was doing before he took that glorious Instagram selfie. Now, why am I showing you this? When we created AI for Good, basically in 2017, this type of technology and capability was probably limited to a few governments or maybe to the Googles of the world. It certainly wasn't mainstream. But I think now that in 2024, since the advent of generative AI tools, someone can literally do this from their bedroom. Now, is this good or is this bad? Well, it depends. I mean, in this case, it's a bit of social commentary. I quite like it. I almost wish I would have thought of this myself. But it's not hard to imagine how this could be used and abused in the wrong hands. And that's exactly why we created AI for Good. Now, AI for Good was built on the premise that we now have 10 years to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, and AI can help to advance many of these sustainable goals and targets. So anything from healthcare to affordable education for all, climate change, clean energy, spotting inequity, spotting gender equity, autonomous driving, smart cities, robotics. I think we can all agree that there's no shortage of positive use cases. And in fact, there was a mapping that was done recently in the scientific journal Nature Communications, where roughly 80% of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals could be positively impacted by AI, but about 35% of them could be negatively impacted by AI. And of course, we have to be mindful of the unintended consequences of AI. Of course, top of mind is job loss due to automation, but also there's a lot of concerns around, data sets, making sure they're inclusive and free of bias, making sure that machines or systems or algorithms that are making decisions for us or on behalf of us are ethical by design, they respect safety, they respect privacy, they're inclusive, they're sustainable, and then also, probably very importantly to ITU and the UN, will AI basically help to bring the digital divide together or further deepen the digital divide? But the good news is, I think on the whole, we see more positive use cases than the negative use cases. But that's not really good enough. And I think the chairman of Siemens, who was at our global summit a few years ago, said it best. And basically he was saying, what a pity that the lion's share of AI talent and researchers and people who have knowledge on machine learning are basically being used to figure out your consumer preferences so they can sell you more stuff online, instead of working towards global global challenges and advancing the Sustainable Development Goals. So how do we know that these high potential applications work equally well on men or women, or on the children or the elderly, on persons with different skin colors, persons with disabilities, or in low-resource settings, developing countries where basic things like connectivity and electricity, which we take for granted, are actually real issues. Now, these are not things that occur naturally to the fast-moving tech industry or startup industry. I think the approach is more like, let's build it and we'll fix it later. But these are things that we think deeply about in AI for Good. But another thing is, how do we know what is good? So you and I, we could spend probably all day trying to come up what is good. What's good for me might not be good for you. Different countries, different communities, different cultures have a different understanding of what is good. But luckily, we don't need to start from scratch, because we have United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is basically 17 goals and 169 targets agreed upon by all member states, creating a framework for what is good. So if you're working on some kind of AI application or research or project or startup, you don't need to reinvent the wheel each time. You actually have a kind of lighthouse, if you will, guiding your efforts on what is good, and those are the UN SDGs. So simply put, the goal of AI for Good is to identify practical applications of AI to advance the Sustainable Development Goals and figure out how to scale those goals and targets for global impact. And how do we do this? Well, first of all, we can't do this alone. So we have virtually the entire UN system who are partners of AI for Good. So that's 40 UN agencies, and they all bring something different to the table. So UNESCO would bring AI ethics, for example. The human rights folks will bring a human rights angle. We work with WHO on healthcare, and they're all there to contribute to our programming, to lend expertise, to connect, but also to learn together and see how we can, advance this for all. And the AI experts themselves would say that AI is too important to leave to the experts alone. So apart from the UN agencies, great efforts have been made to bring as many people to the table as possible. So of course we have all the top tech companies there, all the leading academic researchers. We have the 40 UN agencies. We have our ministers and ambassadors and regulators from our member states, civil society, but also bringing efforts to bring young people to the table, the artists, athletes, the creatives, international media, who all have an interest in seeing a beneficial future of AI for humankind. And I could talk about AI for Good all day, but I'd like to show you a quick video to help you imagine what AI for Good is. And also there's some key messages from both the Secretary General of the UN and our Secretary General from ITU in this video.
The AI for Good Global Summit, convened by ITU, recognizes the joint responsibility of governments, the private sector, United Nations agencies, academia, and others to ensure AI reaches its full potential while preventing and mitigating harms.
And it's a moment that calls for action. And today I'm calling on each of you to use this summit to help the world to better understand what kinds of regulations, what kinds of guardrails we need to put in place right now.
The AI for Good Global Summit.
AI for Good Global Summit.
UN 산하기구 주최로 스위스
UN Global Summit.
The UN Technology Agency.
UN에서 개최한
Par les Nations Unies sur l'intelligence artificielle.
What are the potential risks, and then work together with regulators and governments around the world to make sure that we put up the right guardrails.
Major themes of this year's summit include ways of using AI to enhance healthcare, to fight climate change, and to bridge the digital divide between rich and poor communities.
Right here at the UN, we've helped launch the AI for Climate Action and are strong supporters of the International Telecommunication Union's AI for Good initiative.
So together, Let's make it innovative. Let's make it safe. And let's make it responsible for all. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so most people think of AI for Good as a global summit, like you just saw, but one of our catchphrases is that we're more than just a summit. And yes, there's a summit that takes place each year in Geneva, but actually we have an online program where we do something in the order of 150 online events on AI for Good each year. So that's almost every working day. You can see our calendar. Every yellow mark there is a session. And we have a community of 25,000 experts on this platform called the Neural Network. And that's basically where we do the online programming, but there's also matchmaking, virtual events, virtual exhibits. So you can think of it almost as an AI, Netflix of AI, combined with a dating app, combined with a virtual events platform, where people can actually scale that networking and everything that we do at physical events online as well. And then, of course, that generates a number of collaboration efforts. So another one of our talking points is that we're more of a talk shop. We're AI for Good in action. So AI for Good is presented, there's the learn part, which is all of our webinars and talks where there's a lot of knowledge exchange. But we also have a number of collaboration efforts, and one of them is actually in partnership with this event right here. Last night, we were a partner of the Neuron Awards, where we were basically giving awards to the best startups using AI to advance sustainability. And we have a pitching competition that basically is in synergy with what the Neuron Awards are. So there's a strong link between the Cannes event and the Global Summit. But beyond that, we also generate machine learning challenges, standardization work, different studies and surveys and breakthroughs. And then, of course, it's a connection mechanism for everyone to connect in Geneva at the summit, but also online. And one of the things I'd like to focus on is what we call focus groups. So these are pre-standardization efforts, and I like to think of them as trying to solve the building blocks that are preventing AI for Good problem solving from achieving scale. So here we have different groups that are working on, how to exchange data. What does the standardization landscape look like? What kind of gap analysis is needed? They perform benchmarking, best practices. They create sandboxes where you can test the efficacy and evaluate different algorithms and how they perform. And of course, underlying this is really that approach of inclusivity and making sure that data sets are global, they're inclusive, and not just designed for one part of the world. And some notable collaborations have been AI in Health, which is done with the World Health Organization, and also WIPO, the Intellectual Property Organization. And they're basically working on an independent assessment platform to evaluate high-potential AI health algorithms. So if you look at the traditional way of drug development, it takes years to put a drug to market. You have to go to the FDA, you have to do loads of testing, it usually costs millions of dollars, takes a number of years. But high-potential AI applications are basically going up on the App Store with very little oversight, probably daily or hourly. Now, I'm not saying this is a good or a bad thing, but if you're the mayor of a city, or you're running a hospital, or you're a policymaker, or you're a health minister, there's no real way to independently assess and evaluate the efficacy of these healthcare applications in an independent manner. So that's one thing that they're trying to work on with ITU, who has basically the technology, WHO, the healthcare, and WIPO, the intellectual property. And similar efforts are underway dealing, for example, with natural disaster management, basically looking at how AI and robotics can be used to sort of predict, mitigate, and manage natural disasters. And that's done in partnership with WMO and UNEP. And likewise, we have a similar effort with AI and digital agriculture, where if you look at the combination of AI, geosatellite imagery, big data, social media data, drones, robotics, and using AI to make sense of all this data to basically increase agricultural yields and basically try and feed the planet. And that's done with FAO. So these focus groups, the reason I'm highlighting them is that they're open. There's no membership fee. It's contribution driven. So anyone here who has any kind of expertise, whether you're a data scientist or you know about AI, or you can bring something to the table, all you have to do is get in touch and get involved, and then you literally have an opportunity to work on the sustainable development goals using AI in a deliberate and practical way. Another way we basically try to achieve our mission is through machine learning challenges. So these are launched regularly on different topics like tiny machine learning, ML and 5G networks, geosatellite challenges, AI for climate, AI for fusion. And basically what we're trying to do here is come up with problem statements and to problems that don't have solutions yet, and basically go to the crowd and crowdsource solutions to these problems. And these are open competitions, and typically hundreds of teams compete for prizes and for recognition and for support. And it's a very good way of engaging the next generation of engineers, of developers, of the creatives to find solutions aligned with the SDGs, and that might actually help to create standards for the future to help have a safe and responsible future with AI. And very quickly, I'd just like to highlight, so in May, just a couple months from now, we'll be having a summit in Geneva. You're all invited. Some of the speakers coming you'll probably recognize, like Sam Altman, Jeffrey Hinton, Stuart Russell. It's basically a who's who of AI, but also bringing many voices to the table who are not normally there. And at the same time, part of the role of the summit is to really demonstrate the capabilities and limitations of these technologies. And I think this event does that really well as well. So there'll be a lot of robotics. There'll be demos on brain-machine interfaces, on drones, and basically these practical, I like to think of it as the physical manifestation of AI, or the embodiment of AI. And I'd like to show you just another video where this year's focus would be on brain-machine interfaces in the exhibit area. And basically what that means, you probably all heard of Neuralink, putting sensors in the brain to help the most extreme cases of people who are paralyzed to maybe use their brain waves to operate a machine or say a word or operate a mouse or a cursor or even play a video game. And even though these are early days, I think the potential is huge, and that will be demonstrated at the summit. And this little video will help you imagine what to expect there. So exciting stuff. Maybe in a couple years' time, I'll just be able to stand here and use my thoughts and beam it out to you telepathically. But the early days of that technology is here, and if you come to the summit, you'll be able to see that. So last but not least, I just want to invite you all to come. AI for Good, it's a platform. It's free for all. And basically, we invite you to attend, to network, find connections, be visible. If you want to speak or you have some ideas for programming, you can get in touch. It's also a place to collaborate, to join all of our machine learning challenges, our pitching competitions, our standards work, and also to use the platform to innovate. And I'm sorry there's no time for Q&A because I was replacing Neil, and in about 3 minutes I have to go to the ambassador stage for a panel. But if you are around and you want to catch me afterwards, there's an AI for Good booth, and I'd be happy to take any questions at that point. So thank you so much for your attention, and now I'm going to sprint to the other side. Thank you.